Alright, hello again. I thought I'd do this one more time. I recorded this earlier this morning and it was pretty noisy with the background insects and so on, so I'll try it one more time. So my final thoughts on the Sony a7R3, which I'm using to record this video right now with the Sony 24-105 f4, and I think I've got a Video Pro mic. What is this? A Rode Video Micro Pro, whatever. You know, it's the small hot shoe mounted microphone that Rode makes, and I'm using my phone to kind of keep an eye on things since I don't have the flippy screen here where you can flip it out like the G9. Yeah. So anyway, I've had the a7R3. A little bit hot out here today too, so that's a better reason to do it in the morning. But I had the a7R3 since December 2017, I think it is, so 7-8 months now, and the Panasonic G9, Lumix G9 for about I don't know, probably sometime in the spring. It's been several months now. So both cameras are great. Both have some, you know, some positives and negatives, and but overall I think they're two really good choices. We'll get to the Nikon Z stuff here a little bit later, and you know, just what I think about those compared to the Nikon Z6 and Z7 compared to the a7R3, a7 III, and smaller sensor cameras like the G9, which has a 4/3 sensor. So of course the a7R3 is a full frame mirrorless camera, and as far as the size goes, I'm just going to talk briefly about what I think about them, because I've kind of already made a video before and everybody's talked to death about these cameras. So the a7R3, I'll just go over some of the negatives first. Still having some issues with the lockup where you'll take a picture, you lower it, and you press the playback button. Well, it's probably still writing, I think it is, and then the camera will just lock up. The screen will be on, you can kind of get into some of the menus, but you can't see a live view of any image. You can't play back your image, and turning it off and on doesn't help to recover it. The only way you can recover it is to take the battery out and then put the battery back in. So that doesn't happen all the time, it's just kind of random. I do have the latest firmware installed, forgot to mention that the last time I recorded this video. I've actually got another video of what it looks like when it's locked up, and I'll try to put that in the description below if I remember. And by the way, all my photo galleries for these two cameras I'll put in the description and the link below. And so anyway, back to the cameras. So it's got that lockup problem. Sometimes it'll go weeks without it happening, and then sometimes it'll be more frequent. Just last week I think it was, it did it like 3 times in a row. You know, I took a picture and locked up, I had to take the battery out, you know, took a few more shots, you know, within just a couple minutes it locked up on me again when I was trying to review a picture, and did it one more time after I reset it, you know, within the next couple minutes. And I'm using SanDisk, the best SanDisk 64 gig SDXC cards that they have. They're UHS 1, they're not UHS 2. Only the first slot is UHS 2 anyway. So, you know, if Sony or anybody else tries to say, well, don't use a UHS 1. Well, they support UHS 1. They shouldn't say don't ever use UHS 1 because you might get some lockups. It's better to use UHS 2. They should tell you, you know, if you're going to have that problem, just use a UHS 2. But what if you're shooting, you're done with your first card, and you had to shoot to the second slot for some reason? That's UHS 1. So then what? You know, you still have the same issue where you could have a potential lockup. But the only thing I could assume is that it's related to the camera trying to write, and you're looking at trying to access the picture, what's being written. I mean, I've never had that problem before on any of my Panasonic cameras, Olympus cameras, Nikon cameras. Used Nikon for a long time until 2012, and I still kept using Nikon, but I would have like a second camera for like a Olympus EM1, EM5. Tried some of the Fuji cameras, XT1, XT2, the X100, X100S. I've been through way too many cameras. My first camera that I really loved, by the way, and kept for quite a while, was a Nikon D700. I'm still looking for the camera that would be my D700. Nikon obviously just released a few cameras, but we'll see where those go. But anyway, back to the a7R3. I would say, as far as any other negatives, it's just still a little bit too slow with the menus and accessing the various functions on the camera. Like if you've got the front dial set as aperture control, so you'll flip through it. You know, if you're at f4, you want to go to f8 real quick. You know, you spin the dial and you might get a little bit past f8 or a little bit before f8 because there's kind of a lag in there. So, you know, it's just a little bit annoying. You might have to go back and forth a little bit until you actually get f8 because you might have passed it or, you know, not actually gotten to it. I don't really have that problem with the G9. I haven't had that problem with any of the other cameras that I've had before, both mirrorless or DSLR. So that's a little bit annoying, and also the startup time, and I'll maybe try to put a link to that A6000 video down below, but I had an A6000 in the past, Sony, and that camera, if it sat for a week or two without using it, you'd turn it on and it's kind of like it go through this boot up period. The display would come on pretty quick, but all the information on the screen, it took about 4 or 5 seconds before it was actually ready to take a picture. The information on the screen just wasn't there until, you know, a couple more seconds. So it's just kind of weird. It's not like that, not that bad on the a7R3, but I noticed if I let it set for a week or a little bit more because I was using the G9, like the time I went on vacation, came back, turned it on, and it took a couple seconds before it would be up and ready. And again, that's this kind of thing I'd never really experienced on a Nikon DSLR or even my, you know, Panasonic cameras. And then the last thing about any kind of negative on the a7R3 was just the body size. It's pretty well ergonomic and comfortable the way it is with that size. I think if it was a little bit bigger but not enough bigger, then it would probably be worse because you couldn't slip your little finger underneath the camera. The way it is now, this is not a good example with the G9, but on the a7R3, a7 III would be the same thing. Your little finger could just slip underneath, and then you gives you a little more support there. The way I would rather have it is, you know, right here with the G7 or the G9, where your little finger is just almost completely covered, and I think that's what Nikon should have done also with the Z6 and Z7. You know, this grip on the G9 is pretty much perfect. I mean, it fits really well. It might actually, I think, be just a little too deep. You know, a little this way, it's probably a little too deep. I'd prefer it to be maybe a little more like the GH5, the GH5. And when you get the grip for the GH5, which is pretty thin, and that just makes it really nice like this, vertical. But on the a7R3, they either should have made it big enough to fit all your fingers, because it's a full frame camera, you're going to have bigger lenses on eventually, or, you know, made it the way it is now, where you can put your little finger underneath of it and it gives you some better support. And yes, you can put the grip on it, but I don't want to put the grip on it because if you've seen the grip, it's huge and it just gets really big. That was the nice thing about the GH5 is you could put that grip on and it wasn't very thick. You know, it was probably only just a little bit bigger than the battery size, and then you could, it was just a really nice package. But if you go with like the G9, then you don't really have to worry about that. You could, you know, you just have the grip and you can use it without the grip and not feel like you're missing anything. Unless you really need the extra battery space, battery capacity, or the buttons for vertical shooting in portrait orientation. The good things about the a7R3, obviously a7R3, you know, the image quality is fantastic, focusing is really good, the IAF is fantastic and nothing like I've seen on any other camera. I mean, it works extremely well. Focusing in general, just, you know, you can see like this during this video here, if I hold the camera up here, you know, I can kind of refocus on that pretty well and then go back to my face. And that's about it for the a7R3, and the 24-105 is really excellent lens also. Now the G9 has got the 12-60, which is like a 24-120, which I wish instead of Sony making a 24-105, I'd rather been a 24-120, just a little bit more reach, and it's kind of a good general purpose lens. You know, it's wide enough that you'd want for most things, and still telephoto for, you know, enough for most things, especially since it's 42 megapixel camera. You could zoom in and crop if you need to later and not really lose much resolution. But the G9, I think, is for me probably the standard on, you know, a great body. And like I said, I wish it probably was just a little less deep right in here, because it does, like if you're trying to reach these function buttons here, my fingers, I'm 5 feet 8 tall, 5 feet 8 inches. It's a little bit difficult for me to reach over there and touch those if I've got a firm grip on the camera, so kind of have to let go a little bit and then reach over. Top one's pretty easy, but the one on the bottom kind of have to stretch over to get to it. But if this was a little more shallow, maybe like the GH5, I think that would be a little bit better. But otherwise, it's really perfect. I really like the dial up here rather than being in the front, because if you're holding a camera left hand, right hand, to reach the front dial for changing aperture, you kind of had to lose your grip over here a little bit and then change it. It's just a little awkward to have it in the front, like Nikon and a lot of other companies do. But I like the way Panasonic did it up here. I mean, it's just so easy, quick and easy to change back and forth between the shutter button and the front dial. And I have mine changed, set for aperture. And the rear dial is perfect also. It's just, I have that set for exposure compensation. I almost never go into manual exposure or shutter speed, but if I had it in shutter speed, I think I've just got the front button as shutter, and again the rear as the exposure compensation. You notice I keep it like this. Well, it does have the articulating screen. I almost really never use it like that. I just keep it protected like that, and occasionally if I need it, I'll bring it out and use it to shoot lower, shoot higher, you know, kind of view it like that. And in those cases, the flippy screen, like on the a7R3 and like the new Nikon Z6 Z7, XT2, Fuji, you know, a lot of cameras like that just kind of flips up and down, and a lot of cases more convenient. But since it's exposed all the time on those cameras, then it's, you know, you can scratch it up a lot more. But I always keep my Panasonic G9 like this, and same thing when I had the GH5. You know, this 12-60 Leica Panasonic lens is really nice. It's 2.8 to f4. Kind of as soon as you start zooming away from 12mm, it goes away from the 2.8. So, but better to have it than not. The Ema Stabilization. I swear, if you've got the IS lock, I think is what it's called, IS lock, when you're shooting video stationary. I mean, that thing is just like being on a tripod. You know, you can just stand here and hold it handheld, and it's just kind of like being on a tripod. It's so steady. a7R3 is not really like that. It's you can tell it's a little bit more shaky. It's not bad, but it's not as good as this. And the GH5 and G85 I think was also like that, where we have that IS lock feature turned on for the Ema Stabilization during video. That thing was just like shooting on a tripod. You know, just overall it's really nice and responsive. You've got the nice screen on top, the top LCD there, and I use that just to quickly look, see what my aperture is, and ISO, see where I'm at on the ISO, because I always use auto ISO, but I always keep auto ISO low enough that it's never really higher than I want it. So I use auto ISO honestly at 400 is my limit on the G9, and if I have to, if I know I'm in a really much darker location, and I need to keep a shutter speed, you know, 15th of a second or higher, then I'll let it go up to 800 or 1600. But you know, I figure why go any higher than you need to. I've got my a7R3 set to top out at 1600 for auto ISO, because it'll just keep going up. If you have your minimum shutter speed set to 1/30th, I mean, it's going to go all the way up to 1600, 3200, 6400, whatever your max is, until it reaches that minimum shutter speed. So, you know, just set your minimum shutter speed where you want it, and keep your auto ISO at a reasonable level. It just depends on the speed of your subject, and you know how much you can handhold. Keep it steady. But that's about it. These two great cameras, a7R3, Panasonic G9, and obviously the G9 doesn't have as much high ISO image quality or dynamic range as a full frame sensor like, you know, the a7R3. I think sensor in that is kind of almost the top rated, or maybe the top rated. I think the D850 sensor may be the top rated full frame sensor at this point. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and check. That's just using those DxO ratings. Some people don't put much faith in those, but that's just kind of a standard to look at, you know, just kind of have some kind of comparison. But yeah, I mean, if you want a really nice compact camera, you know, the G9 is really nice. And again, this is a 24 to 120. That's a really small package. It looks bigger than it is, but the body's really lightweight, and this lens is really lightweight too. You can definitely notice the difference when you pick up this with a 24 to 120 equivalent versus the a7R3 with a 24 to 105 f4 equivalent. But it is what it is, whatever you're comfortable with. Now, on the Nikon Z6 Z7, obviously I don't have one, haven't touched one, but just looking at all the reviews and seeing the information that they have right away, I think it's probably going to be a pretty good success, especially if that adapter that they have for the f-mount lenses is going to be really well without any penalties like slower shutter speed and so on, or any other quirks. And from what we've seen so far, not really any problems like that. The other thing is that people just really throwing a fit and complaining and going crazy about the single card slot, and I think it's a little bit ridiculous and childish to, like some people, you know, these other review sites, or not necessarily review sites, but the fanboy rumor sites, but you know, just doing all their laughing and ha-ha and about you know, Nikon users complaining about the Sony not having dual card slots, now it's the other way around, and just a lot of childish games, you know, but it's just stupid. Obviously there are pro systems, medium format and larger, that well, not larger, but the medium format cameras and pro drones and so on that just have one card slot. So it's not a deal breaker for some people. It just depends on what you need and what you're comfortable with. I personally would obviously rather have 2 card slots. The G9 has 2 nice SD card slots, both UHS-2 by the way, but it's got much smaller files to deal with than the a7R3. But you know, again, it's a7R3. If they did it on one slot, you know, been nice if they could have did it on the other slot. There might have been some you know, performance reason why they just couldn't do it yet. Maybe they will in the future, but I think that's where I think Nikon kind of shot themselves in the foot. They could have made a camera as big as a G9 and maybe had the space to put that other XUD card slot in there, either on top of each other or side by side. Probably could have did it side by side, but I don't know. I think they could have just made the camera a little bit bigger, and then they wouldn't have the complaints about the single card slot. And as far as the focusing goes, we know the image quality is going to be good because the 45 megapixel sensor in the Z7 is pretty much a sensor from the D850, and that's just well-regarded sensor, and you know, outstanding. The new one in the Z6, they say is 24.5 megapixel. It's probably, it might be the sensor from the a7R3, don't really know. But Nikon always seems to have their own specs for it. You know, they have things added or taken away, or there's some kind of, you know, things they do to the sensor that Nikon specs out versus other manufacturers. Maybe made by Sony, don't really know, but it probably is. But they have their own tweaks that they add to it. So, and Nikon, of course, always has, probably to me, the best color out of all the cameras. Sony's been much improved. I really like the color out of Sony using the Adobe Lightroom profiles. I start out with the portrait profile and then just kind of tweak from there. I've got a preset that I made for it, and I just apply that up front and just kind of tweak it from there. Where, you know, the contrast, the saturation, the clarity, or the, what is that new slider? It's not totally new. Dehaze, so, things like that, and sharpening, of course. But there's really not much to say about the Z6 and 7 right now for me. Would it be something I'd get? Definitely. If I had Nikon lenses, I would probably switch to that as soon as it was out and looked like it was okay to buy. You know, no major problems. But right now, having a G9 and an a7R3, being a hobbyist, you know, enthusiast, there's really no reason for me to switch right now. But when it comes time to replace one of these, I'd probably replace the a7R3 because it's a little more aggravating to me than this one, the G9. I have more fun shooting the G9 than I do the a7R3. But the a7R3 is just, you know, it's an outstanding camera, has outstanding image quality, just a few little quirks that just kind of drive me crazy sometimes. And I don't have many lenses. I've only got 2 lenses, 24-105 and a Rokinon 35mm for the Sony, and I've only got the 14-140 and the 12-160, or 12-60 2.8-4 lens for the G9. But like I said, I would keep the G9. There's no reason to get rid of it. And yeah, so when I would get the Z6. There's really no reason. I don't want the Z7. I don't need 45 megapixels. The file's too big. I'd rather have the Z6. Hopefully the wind is not interfering with the video here. But yeah, the Z6 for me looks like, you know, a great camera. Probably what I would get if I wanted to replace one of these, the a7R3 eventually. Maybe in another year or so. We'll see. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But for me, I think that's it right now. Final thoughts on the a7R3 and the G9, and for what it's worth, my few thoughts on the Z6 and Z7. And thank you for the subscribers. If you do subscribe, I appreciate that. I mentioned that the last time in my other video, which I'm probably going to delete. This one turns out alright. If you saw the other video, it was just too loud with all the background noise and the bugs and everything making noise. Thought it'd been nice and quiet in the morning, but boy, those crickets and whoever was out making all that noise. you know, I'm a little bit closer to the microphone this time. A lesson learned. It's probably about 5 feet away now. I'm maybe 3 feet away, and I'm just using my phone to control everything. But if you do subscribe, I appreciate that. And if you had to skip through some of those annoying advertisements, I do appreciate that too, because you know, every 3 or 4 months I might get $100 out of the advertising revenue from my videos, and that just gives me a little something to, like, oh, surprise, I got $100 from Google. You know, it's not much of anything. Obviously, it doesn't pay any bills. It's just play money. Maybe I can buy a circular polarizer filter or something like that. But I think I'm gonna stop it now before it gets too long and keep it all in one file. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate it. Have a good day.